Hi there, Chris from TotallyEV, and here I'm doing a dedicated audio review of the Leapmotor T03. If you want a detailed review of the vehicle itself, make sure you check it up on your pop-up banner or following the links down in the description below or the pinned comments. Now, to kick things off, we'll talk about its audio configuration, and unfortunately at the time of filming I've not been provided any additional information by the manufacturer, be it in terms of wattage or the driver sizes. However, I can only presume you've got full range audio drivers that are positioned within each of the 4 doors, therefore tallying up to 4. There's no actually official means of upgrading the audio system, so just some food for thought. Now, for you to tinker around with the audio settings, you'll want to navigate on the 10.1-inch infotainment system. And here I've taken 1 or 2 notches off bass, added 1 or 2 notches on tenor, and also added quite a few notches on the treble EQ. I've left the balance and fader in terms of their center positions. Now, of course, these are my subjective settings, but this is what I found to give me the best sort of audio reproduction, which I'll be touching upon why further down in this video. Now, in terms of connecting up to the infotainment system, you have got Bluetooth with the SBC codec supported only. That's actually quite disheartening because it's the lowest quality codec that you can attain. It is also further worth highlighting this because Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are not supported over a wired or wireless connection, at least at the time of filming. Of course, this might come in at a later date via future firmware update, but unfortunately there's no current plans. Therefore meaning that if you want higher res audio playback, you might have to resort to using Amazon Music, which is a streaming service that is currently supported via the infotainment system. Now, I would also like to highlight that this is the very first vehicle that I've ever come across that doesn't actually have a high system volume. See, while running the vehicle with the windows down at over 40 miles an hour, and playing back some of my favorite tracks, I found that I actually had to use it at 100% volume. And even then, I felt that I could eke out just a little bit of extra notches in terms of the volume. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And therefore, if you're a little bit harder of hearing, or indeed if you just like to blaze out music even louder than I do, then you might actually be left disappointed by the limitations of the head unit and the built-in amplifier. Now, nonetheless, when it comes to the overall cabin noise, it's also not exactly the best, as you'll be able to see from the cabin measurements which are on your screen. It doesn't exactly do all that good at lower and even higher speeds. And it is further emphasized by the fact that when you're driving at under 20 miles an hour, you've also got a pretty loud humming sound that can be heard within the vehicle. Normally this is an acoustic sound that can be heard from outside of the vehicle, but unfortunately here with the T03, it can also be very much heard within the vehicle and therefore can be quite distracting if you're just conversing with some friends or family while driving at under 20 miles an hour. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get onto an audio demo. I'll be placing the camera and microphone in a few separate locations and playing back a track. It's from Priya J and it's titled Like Me. So I appreciate an audio demo over YouTube is not ideal, but I thought I'd provide it as it gives you a bit of a taster as to what to expect. In terms of my own subjective opinion, I will say that it's not too bad across the sound frequency range and will certainly suffice for the average listener. However, audiophiles alike will actually be left pretty disappointed. Now let me explain why. First off, in terms of the sub-bass tones, they're very much cut short. No surprise given the fact that you do not have a dedicated subwoofer, and therefore the audio drivers that are positioned within each of the 4 doors really have their work cut out. On the flip side over here, the overall mid-bass impact is certainly very hearty. In some cases, I actually found it to be a little bit overzealous, and as a result, I took a few notches off the bass EQ in order to just reduce the impact and also reduce a little bit of rattle that can be heard when you're listening at louder volumes. Although do bear in mind what I mentioned before, it is somewhat capped in that department. As for the overall mid-range reproduction, in other words, the overall vocal tones, they are quite pushed back and recessed. You get quite a V-shaped sound signature, and both the lower and upper mids just don't feel the overall system's forte. As a result over here, you might want to add a few notches in terms of the tenor EQ, but in this respect, you might not want to go crazy with it because it does add a little bit of an odd, veiled and artificial sound, which takes away from what the artist was actually trying to reproduce. As for the overall highs, they extend relatively well, namely if you add quite a few notches in terms of the treble EQ, but here it does feel a little bit rolled off at the top end. And again, it's no surprise over here because you've not got dedicated tweeters within the cabin. As a result, you haven't got that toe tapping feeling that you might come to expect in some more premium offerings. As for the overall soundstage, it is again a little bit lackluster, not only in terms of the overall width and depth that feels a little bit closed, but also in terms of the overall instrument separation, which again is affected by the number of audio drivers that are positioned within the cabin, albeit the fact that you've actually got a relatively compact vehicle and therefore means that it does actually get filled with sound quite easily. Now effectively what I'm trying to say over here is that the audio system within the T03 will certainly suffice for the vast majority of consumers just listening back to radio or their favourite tracks over Bluetooth, but when it comes to some more serious audio listening, well, you'll actually be left disappointed. Now I'd be curious to know what you make of the audio system down in the comment section below and how you feel it compares to some of its competitors. If you've enjoyed this detailed independent video, definitely do consider dropping a like, subscribing and hitting that bell notification. All of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.